let's talk about the human potential movement. The whole wave from the 60s and 70s. When you hear that phrase, certain words probably pop into your head. And they're not always the most complimentary.
You've probably heard it all, right? That it was idealistic, kind of naive, definitely unscientific, maybe even utopian, or just spiritually confused. It's so often written off as just a weird cultural phase that came and went. A nice idea that didn't really go anywhere.
But what if that's getting it completely backwards? What if all those labels are just describing the smoke without ever looking for the fire? Because here's the argument we're going to explore today. For the millions of people who went through it, something absolutely real happened. These weren't just fuzzy feelings or wishful thinking, they were legitimate events. And now, we finally have a new way to understand what was actually going on under the hood.
And that new way of looking at it, well, we're going to call it the structural view. So we're going to set aside the psychological or spiritual interpretations for a minute, and instead, we're going to look at the movement as a series of purely structural events.
What that means is all those incredible reports, people feeling their awareness expand, their whole identity shifting, this deep sense of connection to everything, those weren't just in their heads. They were the telltale signs of a system, the human cognitive system itself, undergoing a massive, fundamental change.
Okay, so to really get this, we have to rewind a bit. We have to look at what came before the movement. What was happening in the world that set the stage for something so huge to happen in the first place?
Think about the 1950s. Western society was under this immense invisible pressure. Let's call it civilizational load. You had the trauma of the wars still hanging in the air. You had these super rigid corporate and social structures. Everyone was locked into these fixed roles. It all created this massive compression on who you were allowed to be. The whole system looked really stable on the outside, but underneath it was incredibly tense and brittle.
And this is the absolute key to the whole thing. When a system is under that much pressure, when it's that close to a breaking point, you don't actually need to add a huge new force to change it. All you have to do is let some of the pressure out. That simple release was the hidden engine that drove the entire movement. So this totally flips the script, right? The common story is that the movement was all about inventing these new therapies and wild techniques, but that's not where the power came from. Not at first. The real magic was way simpler. It just started taking the pressure off. I mean, think about what those workshops and encounter groups actually did. They created these little temporary bubbles, places where the normal rules didn't apply, where you could stop being the boss or the mom for a weekend, and where it was suddenly safe to just be yourself. As soon as you drop that load, the system underneath can finally take a breath and start to reorganize itself.
So what does that reorganization actually feel like from the inside? Let's break down some of those famous experiences people had and see if we can translate them into this new structural language. The first big idea is something called coherence expansion. The best way to think about it is this. All that noise in your head, the constant worrying, the conflicting desires, the pressure to conform, imagine it just goes quiet. And in that quiet, everything inside you starts to line up. Things just click into place. And here's how that big, abstract idea actually feels to a person. It feels like clarity. It feels like connection. It's that sense of authenticity, of being emotionally open, of being truly present. See, the movement didn't invent these feelings. It just accidentally created the conditions where our natural state of coherence could finally bubble to the surface. All right, next step, identity elasticity. Most of the time, under all that daily pressure, our sense of self feels really solid, almost rigid. But when you take that pressure away, our identity can actually become flexible, elastic, and that allows different parts of ourselves, different ways of being to come forward. So when people from that time talked about finding their true self or shedding their conditioning, this is what was actually happening structurally. They were experiencing their own identity becoming elastic. It wasn't about finding some secret person hidden inside. It was about their system giving the freedom to reconfigure itself into a more authentic shape. And this one explains all those sudden aha moments. A threshold event is that massive, life-changing insight that feels like it comes out of absolutely nowhere. From a structural view, it's just a tipping point. The system was already so ready for a change that one tiny little thing could trigger a huge reorganization. And that helps explain why groups are so incredibly important. It was no accident. In a group, the mental and emotional load gets spread out. People's states of coherence can actually link up and synchronize. That makes everyone in the room more likely to hit a threshold, which in turn amplifies the experience for everybody else. The group itself became a powerful engine for change. Okay, this all sounds pretty amazing, which leads us to the million-dollar question. If these experiences were so real and so powerful, why didn't they last? Why did so many people go back to their regular lives and feel that incredible feeling just fade away? And this right here, this slide, nails it. The movement was absolutely brilliant at generating these states. It was a factory for temporary coherence and identity expansion. But it had no idea how to sustain them. It was like they discovered fire, but had no clue how to build a fireplace. They were missing the architecture, the tools to manage that load in day-to-day life. So let's be super clear. The movement was not a failure. It was an unstabilized transition. It threw open a door and showed millions of people a breathtaking new landscape on the other side. But it didn't give them a map or a compass for how to actually live there. So when they went home and all the old pressures came rushing back, the system just snapped back to the old familiar. And that's what makes this so relevant for us right now. Because today, we can look back with that missing piece. We have the language of structural cognition. We have the architecture that they were missing. This new framework doesn't dismiss what happened. It validates it. It finally explains why those experiences felt so real and transformative. But it also explains why they were so flaky and hard to hang on to. And it even explains why so many belief systems had to be created afterwards. People were just trying to build a story around an experience they couldn't explain mechanically. You could put it like this. The human potential movement was like a spontaneous, powerful lightning strike. It was a structural awakening. Structural cognition, on the other hand, is about learning how to build the power grid. It's how that awakening gets to grow up and become a stable, mature reality. So we're left with this really powerful question. That generation, they kicked down the door and proved what was possible. They showed us that a deeper coherence, a more elastic identity, is built right into our own cognitive hardware. The question for us now is, armed with this new architectural understanding, can we be the generation that finally figures out how to build it to last?